The knock came at 7:12 p.m. I know because I just glanced at the microwave, checking how long the lasagna had left. Wednesday nights were always calm. A little wine, reheated leftovers, maybe some half-watched rerun from whatever show Netflix thought I still liked. Rachel was upstairs, supposedly folding laundry, though I hadn't heard the dryer buzz or the usual rhythmic creak of our ancient bed frame as she moved around. The house was quiet, sterile almost, like it had been paused mid-breath. When the doorbell rang, I assumed it was a delivery. Probably another Amazon package for Rachel. She'd been ordering all sorts of random things lately. A yoga mat, an air fryer, even though she hated cooking. But when I opened the door, it wasn't a driver or a box. It was Leah. She looked flustered. Her cardigan hung loosely over one shoulder like she'd left in a hurry. Wind-blown auburn hair framed her face, which was flushed, either from the cold air or something else. "Hey," she said, smiling awkwardly. "Sorry to bother you." "No bother at all." I leaned against the frame. "Everything okay?" Leah laughed, a soft, breathy sound. Yeah. It's just, I'm making a peach cobbler, and, well, turns out I'm out of sugar." I smiled. "Classic. I know, right?" she said, cheeks coloring more. "I swear I had some. But Nate's been making those protein smoothies again, so." "Say no more," I said, stepping back and waving her in. "Come on, I'll grab it." She hesitated on the threshold. Not dramatically, just a slight pause, like she wasn't sure whether to take the step. Then she did. Leah had always been polite. Kind. A little reserved, maybe, but sweet in that small-town way that made you like her even if you didn't know her that well. We'd lived across the street from her and Nate for almost 4 years, but our relationship had never gone past neighborly waves and the occasional barbecue invite. Now she was standing in my kitchen, fiddling with the hem of her sleeve while I reached for the sugar canister. "Busy night?" I asked. She laughed again. "Not really. Nate's at the gym." "Right. He's a personal trainer, isn't he?" "Yeah," she said quickly, still chasing that six-pack dream. "You know how it is." I nodded, though I didn't. I'd never been a gym guy. Too many mirrors. Too much noise. Give me a quiet house and a good book any day. Leah's eyes drifted toward the staircase, the same way mine had been doing lately. I wondered if she was listening for Rachel too. The upstairs hallway light was on, casting a dim glow down the stairs, but there was still no movement. No sound. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," Leah said softly. "Not at all," I replied. "Rachel's just folding laundry." She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought she was going to say something. But instead, she smiled and took the sugar I handed her. "You're a lifesaver," she said, clutching the container like it was made of gold. "I promise I'll return it tomorrow." "No rush," I said, following her to the door. At the threshold, she paused again. Something about the way her body lingered in the doorway, like she wanted to say more or ask something. "You and Rachel doing okay?" she asked finally, glancing up with careful eyes. The question hit harder than it should have. Maybe because it came from someone who wasn't supposed to notice. Or maybe because I wasn't sure how to answer anymore. I shrugged. "You know how it is. Work. Life. We get busy." "Right," she said. Well, if you ever need anything or someone to talk to, I'm usually home." I smiled. "Appreciate that." She turned to leave, then paused again. "Oh, by the way," she said, "you have really great taste in candles." "Candles?" She nodded toward the faint scent drifting through the open doorway. "Amber and cedarwood," she guessed. "My favorite. I used to wear a perfume that smelled just like that." And just like that, the air changed. My breath caught. My throat tightened. Because it wasn't the candle she was smelling. It was Rachel's perfume. The one she used to wear every day for years and hadn't touched in months. My smile stayed steady, but inside, something shifted. "Yeah," I said casually. "Nice scent." Leah nodded. "Anyway, thanks again. See you around." And then she was gone. Back across the street, into her tidy little house with its white porch railing and potted succulents. I watched her disappear behind the front door, the sugar clutched to her chest like something secret. I closed the door and leaned against it, breathing in that lingering trace of amber and cedarwood. Rachel hadn't worn that scent in almost half a year. But tonight, it was in the air. I couldn't shake the scent. After Leah left, I walked back into the kitchen and stood there, just breathing. That same perfume, amber and cedarwood, hung in the air like a whisper I wasn't supposed to hear. Rachel hadn't worn it in months. I knew because I used to love the way it clung to our sheets, the way it lingered on her scarf when she hugged me. It was the scent I'd catch when she curled up beside me on the couch, and I'd think, yeah, this is home. But she stopped wearing it. Just one day it was gone. No reason. No conversation. Like she'd decided the scent didn't belong to this version of her anymore. So why was it back? The lasagna dinged in the microwave, reminding me of the life I was still pretending to live. I plated it, sat at the table, and ate alone. Rachel came downstairs just as I was finishing, holding her phone, eyes on the screen. Smells good, she said. I looked at her. Want some? She shook her head. Already ate. She didn't say when or what. Just already ate. She kissed the top of my head and walked past me, still scrolling. I stared at her plate. Clean. Dry. Tucked neatly back in the cabinet, like it hadn't been used at all. That night, lying in bed, I asked without asking, "Did you see Leah today?" Rachel turned her head slowly, as if she were choosing her words. No, why? She stopped by. Borrowed sugar. She blinked. Huh, that's funny. I thought we were out. I found a bag in the back of the pantry. Guess I missed it. She turned back to her book. One of those trendy thrillers with a title like The Silent Wife or The Woman in the Window. Lately, she'd been reading more than usual. Always with the same glass of wine. Always curled on her side, like she was preparing to sleep without me. Did she say anything? Rachel asked after a pause. I shrugged. Just thanks. She didn't ask more. And I didn't say anything about the perfume. In the mornings, I started noticing small things. The sugar, for one. The bag was lower than I remembered. Nothing dramatic, but enough to make me raise an eyebrow. Then the coffee mugs. There was a cobalt blue mug I didn't recognize. It had a little chip in the rim and a smooth, curved handle. I knew our mugs. Most were wedding gifts or ceramic ones we'd picked up from weekend trips to mountain towns and little coastal cafes. This one wasn't ours. I rinsed it and put it back, trying not to overthink it. Maybe Rachel bought a new one. Maybe I just forgot. But the next day, it was there again. Same chip, same odd presence. And it wasn't alone. There were 2 mugs in the sink when I came home early that Friday. Both still warm, one with a faint ring of lipstick at the rim. Rachel's shade. The kind she always reapplied before going out for errands. But her car was parked outside, and she didn't hear me come in. I stood in the kitchen, listening. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I called out, "Rach." No answer. I took a step forward, and then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of a phone quickly being placed face down. Then footsteps. Light ones. She appeared from the hallway like she'd just remembered I lived here. "Oh hey," she said, smiling. "You're home early." I smiled back. "Yeah, got out of the meeting early." "Nice." She leaned on the counter like nothing was wrong. "Want me to make coffee?" "No thanks. Already had some." I looked at the mugs in the sink. She followed my gaze and casually turned the water on. "Just had some with a friend." "A friend." Her nod was too fast. "Leah stopped by." Again. She laughed lightly. "Guess she's making a lot of cobblers." I waited. I gave her the space to fill in the silence. But she didn't. Just rinsed the mugs and changed the subject. Something about dinner plans. Something vague. I noticed her phone again, always face down now. Locked. Notifications silenced. That hadn't always been the case. I wasn't the jealous type. I'd never needed to be. We'd built our relationship on boring trust, the kind of trust people envied. But that trust was built on the little things, the shared glances, the predictable gestures, the way we used to leave our phones anywhere without a second thought. Now, everything felt curated. She was always busy, always tired, always retreating behind a book or a screen. And the coffee mug, still damp in the drying rack the next morning, wasn't mine. I would have remembered it. Because I was starting to remember everything now. Every detail. Every time she came home with her hair slightly more tousled, her blouse tucked in just a little too neatly. It wasn't the kind of evidence that screams. But it whispered. And that whisper was growing louder. That weekend, Rachel said she needed time to herself. She was going to take a walk, maybe drive into town. I watched her leave from the front window. She didn't see me. She wasn't wearing the perfume that morning. But when she came home, it was back. Subtle. Soft. Familiar. I didn't ask. And she didn't offer. She kissed my cheek like always, but it felt different. Because I'd been kissed by that scent before. and I wasn't sure it belonged to me anymore. I don't remember the first time she said it. Just helping Leah with something. It came out casually, offhand. No reason to question it at first. I think I even nodded, said something like, "Oh, that's nice of you," and went back to whatever I was doing, probably sipping coffee, probably scrolling through some article I wouldn't remember 5 minutes later. But then she said it again, and after the third or fourth time, it started to settle in my bones like a splinter I couldn't dig out. Because Rachel and Leah had never been particularly close. Not friends, exactly, more like familiar faces in a shared ecosystem. Pleasant nods at mailboxes, quick hellos across the fence. But now suddenly they were spending time together? Rachel had never even invited Leah over for coffee before. Now she was helping her with the garden, helping her paint a room, helping her organize her garage. Rachel wasn't the organizing type. She wasn't the painting type either. And the garden? We could barely keep basil alive on our own windowsill. It wasn't the lie itself that disturbed me. It was how effortless it had become. Like she was borrowing the truth the way she borrowed sugar. Just a little here, a little there. Enough to sweeten the narrative and get her through the day. One Tuesday afternoon, I watched her from the upstairs office. She left the house in yoga pants and a light hoodie, holding a small tote bag. Her hair was up, face makeup free except for a little gloss. Casual, relaxed, pretty, but not trying. She didn't cross the street directly. She walked halfway down our block, looked both ways, no cars, and then turned toward Leah and Nate's house. She didn't knock. Just let herself in through the side gate, like she belonged there. I stayed by the window for almost an hour. She didn't come back out. Later that evening, over dinner, I asked if she saw Leah again. Rachel didn't even blink. "Yeah," she said, cutting into her chicken. She needed help with some boxes in the attic. Her shoulder's been acting up. I nodded. "That's thoughtful of you." She smiled. "Well, I told you, we've been talking more." "And what about Nate? He around?" A pause. Barely a breath. "No, he was out. Training clients." Of course he was. I glanced at her hands. No dust. No scratches. No attic grime. Her nails were still perfect, short, polished, not a mark on them. I could have said something, but I didn't. The next day, I checked the recycling bin. Not obsessively, just curious. There was a takeout container from a sushi place we hadn't ordered from in years. 2 sets of chopsticks. We hadn't had sushi that week. Not together. I opened the trash lid again and stared at it longer than I probably should have. The rice was still stuck in the corners. One of the chopsticks had a faint pink lipstick smear. Rachel's shade. When she came home that night, she dropped her bag by the stairs like usual and stretched with a yawn. "Leah needed help clearing out her garage," she said. "We ended up hauling so much stuff. I think I'm gonna feel it in my back tomorrow." "Want a heating pad?" I asked. She looked surprised. "You're sweet. Maybe later." We watched TV together for 20 minutes. Something generic. Background noise. She leaned her head against my shoulder like it was still our life. But it wasn't. Not really. She didn't smell like sweat or dust or the usual sharp sting of cardboard after hours in a garage. She smelled like rosewater and vanilla. And she was still wearing lipstick. A week passed, then 2. The same script. Helping Leah. Running errands. Quick trip to the pharmacy. Sometimes she came home with nothing. Other times, she'd hold up a small bag with a single item, a bottle of conditioner, a jar of moisturizer. Excuses dressed up as proof. Once, I checked the receipt in the bag. The timestamp was nearly 3 hours old. I started keeping a small journal. Not because I wanted to trap her, but because I needed to know if I was losing my mind. Every time she mentioned Leah, I wrote it down. Date, time, reason. And then I watched. She always left around the same time. Late morning or mid-afternoon. Never evening. Never when I was around. Once, I walked out to check the mail just after she'd returned. She startled when she saw me, then quickly tucked her phone into her back pocket. "Didn't hear you come back," I said. Leah wanted help hanging some curtains. I nodded. Then I noticed she wasn't wearing shoes. Barefoot on the walkway, toes slightly damp. No one takes their shoes off to hang curtains in someone else's house. One Saturday morning, I got up early, hoping to catch her before she vanished again. Rachel was in the kitchen, dressed neatly, brushing crumbs off the counter. She was humming. Humming. That sound hadn't come out of her in weeks. She jumped slightly when she saw me. "You scared me." "Sorry," I said. "Didn't mean to sneak up." "You're up early." "So are you." She smiled. I was thinking of heading over to Leah's, just to help with some laundry she needs folded. She has a bad wrist, remember? Of course, I said. I poured a cup of coffee and leaned against the sink. You know, I said, you're a better neighbor than I ever realized. Rachel tilted her head. What do you mean? You're always helping Leah. You two must be really close now. She nodded slowly. We've been bonding more lately. Nice, I said, taking a sip. I don't suppose she ever helps you with anything? Rachel blinked. Well, no, she said after a beat. But that's not why I help. It's just neighborly. I smiled. Of course. She left 10 minutes later. She didn't return with laundry. And when I went into the guest bathroom that night, I noticed something small, out of place. A faint ring in the soap dish. Lipstick again, but not Rachel's shade. The knock came just as I was about to leave for the hardware store. It was late morning, Saturday again, and Rachel had already stepped out. No note, no text, just gone, sometime after the shower, her perfume still clinging to the air like she wanted it to haunt me. I thought it might be a delivery, maybe a neighbor's package dropped on our porch again. But when I opened the door, there she was. Leah, holding the sugar. I figured I should bring this back, she said, holding the half-full canister like it was a peace offering. Her voice was a little too bright, and she looked awkward. Not in a clumsy way, just in the way people do when they've been holding something in too long. I opened the door wider. You didn't have to bring it back so soon. Well, she said, stepping in, I didn't want you to think I was stealing from you. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I closed the door behind her, watched as she glanced around the kitchen. It's quiet, she said. Rachel not home. Out. Oh. The words sat heavy between us. I took the sugar from her and set it on the counter. You want coffee? She blinked. Oh, I shouldn't stay long. I didn't press. Just stood there, awkward in my own kitchen. I like your house, she said after a moment, eyes tracing the old wood trim near the windows. Feels warm. Thanks. It's seen better days. Better days are overrated. Her tone was sharper than I expected, almost bitter. She looked at me then, really looked. Her face was softer in the morning light. No makeup, hair tied back in a messy braid that made her look younger. Or maybe just more real. I'm sorry if I made things weird the last time I was here, she said suddenly. You didn't. I stayed too long. I didn't mind. Another pause. This one deeper. She shifted her weight. It's just. I've been wanting to talk to someone, and I guess I thought maybe. She stopped, shook her head. Never mind. Forget it. No, I said quickly. Go on. Her eyes searched mine. It's just. I feel like I'm losing my grip. Lately, things feel off. In your house. In my life. That landed. I nodded, slowly. Yeah, same. She gave a nervous laugh. You ever feel like you're the last person to know something? Like everyone else has been reading the script but you? All the time. I keep trying to make excuses, she said, voice lower now. But they're just patterns. You know? Yeah. Her fingers grazed the edge of the counter. Nate doesn't touch me anymore. Not unless he wants something. And even then, it's mechanical. Like maintenance. I looked down at the floor, not sure how to respond. She kept talking. Last week, he said he was going to a client's house for a late session. Didn't come home until after midnight. Said he fell asleep on their couch. That's bold, I muttered. She smiled, faintly. He doesn't think I notice. Or maybe he doesn't care. I nodded toward the sugar. Was that just an excuse? She looked at me, and something flickered in her expression. Yeah, she said. I didn't need it. I just wanted to be somewhere else. The honesty hung in the air like smoke. I felt a knot tighten in my chest, a strange mix of guilt and relief. Because I'd been feeling the same thing. That quiet, desperate need to escape, even for a few minutes. Even to someone else's kitchen where the lies hadn't quite settled yet. I keep asking myself what changed, I said. But I think I already know. Me too. Her voice trembled, just slightly. I don't know why I'm telling you all this, she added, brushing a hand through her hair. Because you needed to. She nodded. Her eyes went distant for a moment, then returned to mine. Rachel's been over a lot, she said softly. More than you probably know. I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. I figured, I replied. She never says much about you, Leah went on. But when she does, it's like she's trying not to say the real thing. You know? Yeah. She seems distracted. Even when we talk. Did she tell you why? No, she said. But I don't think she has to. Another silence. This one long enough to feel like a decision. Then Leah exhaled, like she'd been holding it all in for weeks. Has Rachel been distant with you too? I looked at her. Not away. Not past her. At her. Yes, I said. She looked like she might cry. Or laugh. Or both. I thought maybe it was just us, she said. But now I think. Maybe it's not. I didn't know what to say, so I said the only honest thing I could think of. I don't think they're who they were anymore. She swallowed hard. No, I don't think we are either. That scared me more than anything. She took a step back, like the air had grown too heavy. I should go, she said. Okay. But she didn't move right away. Her hand hovered over the edge of the counter again, the same spot where Rachel always set her wine glass. Her fingers touched it gently, almost absently. Then she looked up. You know what I miss? She asked. What? Being looked at like I mattered. Not like an obligation. Not like I was in the way. I could feel my throat tighten. Me too. She smiled, sadly, gently, and nodded. Then she turned, walked to the door, and opened it. Before stepping out, she looked over her shoulder and said something so soft I almost missed it. I don't think they think we'll figure it out. And then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her. The sugar sat on the counter, half full. I didn't move. I just stood there, thinking about the weight of what she'd said. About the way her voice had caught on the word distant. About the way Rachel had kissed me less, touched me less, lied more, but smiled just the same. There was no big reveal. No dramatic affair confession. Just two people, on opposite sides of the street, slowly noticing that their lives didn't make sense anymore. I stood in the kitchen until the sun shifted and the shadows changed. And still, I didn't touch the sugar. The truth didn't arrive like a storm. It came like paperwork. Neat. Quiet. Undeniable. I found it on a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning that used to mean nothing. Rachel had already left, early again, claiming she had a few things to take care of. She kissed my cheek on the way out, soft and practiced, like muscle memory. I stood in the doorway and watched her walk down the drive without looking back. The house settled after she left. That deep, hollow quiet where you can hear the refrigerator hum and the pipes sigh in the walls. I wasn't searching. Not consciously. That's what I told myself. I was just clearing the kitchen table. Her planner was there. A slim leather one she'd started using a few months ago, replacing the shared calendar we used to keep on the fridge. I picked it up automatically, intending to move it to the counter. It fell open. Not dramatically. Just enough. A week's spread stared back at me, tidy and color-coded. Appointments. Errands. A lunch circled in pale blue ink. Thursday, 1:30 p.m. L. Not Leah. Just L. I flipped the page back. Then forward. The L appeared again. Same time. Same handwriting. Always midday. Always when I was at work. I closed the planner and set it down carefully, like it might explode. My heart wasn't racing. That was the strange part. I felt methodical. I went upstairs and sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and checked the shared cloud account we still used for bills and documents. Rachel was careful. She always had been, but habits die slowly. There it was. A calendar sync she'd forgotten to disable. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at the screen, my reflection faintly visible in the black glass. I thought of Leah's voice. I don't think they think we'll figure it out. I clicked. Events populated the screen in tidy rows. Most were mundane. Dentist. Grocery run. Errands. Then I saw it. A recurring entry. Coffee. N. 1:30 p.m. N. Not L. Nate. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled. No shouting. No disbelief. No urge to punch a wall. Just alignment. The pieces slid together so cleanly, it almost felt satisfying. Like solving a puzzle that had been insulting me by pretending to be difficult. I scrolled back months. There it was again and again, sometimes labeled coffee, sometimes walk, sometimes help. Always Nate. Always midday. Always followed by a gap, where Rachel's phone location conveniently disappeared. I closed the laptop. That was enough. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was in a meeting. A preview notification lit up the screen. Rachel, running late, helping Elle with something. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I let the screen go dark. When I got home earlier than she expected, I didn't announce myself. I parked down the street and walked the rest of the way. The front door was locked. I circled to the back, peered through the kitchen window. 2 wine glasses on the counter. One still had condensation. I didn't go inside. I went back to my car, sat there, and waited. Rachel came home 20 minutes later. Alone. She didn't look flustered. She looked settled, like someone who'd just finished sex and still had it humming under their skin. Her cheeks were flushed, hair smoothed back into place a little too carefully. When she saw me in the driveway, she smiled. "You're home already?" "Yeah," I said. "Left early. Everything okay?" "Fine." She nodded, unlocked the door, and went inside. I followed. She poured herself water, leaned against the counter, and launched into a story about Leah's cluttered closet. I watched her mouth move. I listened to the cadence, the practiced rhythm of a lie she'd told enough times to believe. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it and turned it face down without thinking. I caught the name. Nate. That was it. No confrontation. No raised voices. No demand for truth. Just confirmation. That night, she slept beside me like nothing had changed. Her body curled toward mine out of habit. Her breathing deepened. She even reached for me once, fingers brushing my arm in the dark. I didn't pull away. I didn't move. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling something cold and precise settle into place inside me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't grief. It was organization. By morning, I had a list in my head. Accounts, documents, dates, patterns. I remembered every time she'd crossed the street and never brought anything back. Every lie that had sounded harmless because I'd wanted it to be. The truth didn't hurt the way I expected. It clarified. And clarity is dangerous. We didn't plan it. It just started happening. It began with a wave from across the driveway, then a nod, then a good morning that lasted longer than it needed to. A few days later, Leah and I were both outside at the same time, me trimming the hedges, her pretending to sweep the porch. It was cold, barely above 40. Neither of us needed to be out there. She said, "It's too quiet today." I said, "It's always quiet when something's wrong." That was the first conversation that felt like more than neighborly chatter. No false starts. No pretending we were talking about the weather. Just honesty, unspectacular, raw honesty. The kind that didn't require a single explanation. After that, we began to cross paths more intentionally. Not sneaking. Not hiding. Just existing in the same space, finally unguarded. The second time we talked, we sat on my porch. It was dusk. She brought over a thermos of peppermint tea and 2 ceramic mugs. Not the chipped blue one. This time they matched. I didn't ask if she brought them from home or bought them just for this. We didn't talk about Rachel or Nate. Not right away. We talked about small things. The strange rhythm of early spring weather. Her failed attempt to make sourdough last year. How my lawn never seemed to grow evenly on the east side. She didn't fidget. I didn't check my phone. There was something almost holy about the quiet between us. Eventually, the conversation drifted where it was always going to go. I used to think, Leah said, cradling her tea, that it would feel like lightning when I found out. What? You know, the moment. The cheating. I thought it would feel loud. Blinding. And she shook her head. It was more like fog. You don't realize you're in it until you're completely lost. I nodded. We sat for a while, listening to the distant hum of a lawnmower somewhere down the street. She broke the silence again. Nate smells like perfume when he comes home now. I glanced at her. She met my eyes. Rachel's perfume. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. It's not even subtle, she said. It's like they're not trying anymore. They probably think we won't notice. They probably think we're too nice to ask. I chuckled. They'd be right. For now, she added. Another long pause. But it wasn't uncomfortable. If anything, it was intimate. Not in the romantic way, at least not yet, but in the kind of intimacy you only share with someone who has seen the same cracks in their reflection. I found a playlist on Nate's phone, she said. He named it Her. My stomach turned. Her. She nodded. All these soft songs. Acoustic, moody stuff. One of the tracks had a little heart next to it. I asked him who Her was. What did he say? He laughed and said it was for me. She took a slow sip of tea. It wasn't for me, she whispered. I believed her. I wanted to reach out, to put my hand over hers, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I said, Rachel's been deleting her text threads. She raised an eyebrow. She forgets I can see her cloud backups. She deleted one today, but the preview stayed in the notification history. What did it say? I closed my eyes, remembering the words perfectly. Your skin still smells like mine. She closed hers too. I could see it hit her, like a bruise under the surface. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Eventually, she said, I used to imagine what it would feel like if I ever found out. I thought I'd scream, break things. Me too. And now I feel like I'm just rearranging furniture on a sinking ship. She smiled at that. Not because it was funny, because it was true. We didn't cry. We didn't vent. We just sat with it. The knowledge, the mutual ache, the awareness that we had become side characters in our own marriages, each of us folded into someone else's story without our consent. They think we're stupid, Leah said finally. I looked over. Maybe they think we'll keep playing along. That we're too soft, too polite. Are we? Her smile faded into something sharper. Not forever. We didn't make promises that night. No pacts. No revenge fantasies. Just two people sitting shoulder to shoulder on a wooden porch in the early chill of spring, each of us warming our hands on mugs of peppermint tea, both of us soaking in the silence our spouses had left behind. That night, I lay in bed and didn't reach for Rachel. She came in late. Again, she smelled like wine and citrus. Not her usual perfume. But beneath it, barely there, was that amber note again. Like something borrowed. Something reused. I didn't ask. She didn't explain. We both lay there in the dark, each of us facing opposite walls. And for the first time, the silence between us wasn't passive. It was strategic. It was a Wednesday when Leah showed up again. No knock this time. Just her standing outside the porch screen, her arms wrapped around herself. Eyes already finding mine before I even noticed she was there. I opened the door and said nothing. She stepped inside and said even less. We didn't talk about where our spouses were, or what they were probably doing. We just let the silence fill the space until it became something gentler than grief, quieter than rage. I made tea. She didn't ask for it. I just did. She curled up on the far end of the couch, legs tucked beneath her, wearing a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big and a pair of socks that didn't match. I sat on the other end, our bodies separated by a throw pillow and the fragile boundary of mutual restraint. You ever notice, she said finally, how silence starts to sound like comfort? I glanced at her. Yeah, like the absence of noise becomes its own kind of presence. She nodded, then took a slow sip from her cup. Neither of us looked tired, but we were both exhausted. That kind of exhaustion you carry in the way you hold your jaw, or how long you let your eyes linger on nothing. Do you miss him? I asked after a while. She didn't pretend to not know who I meant. I miss who I thought he was, she said. Not who he is now. I nodded. You? I miss being chosen. She looked over at me, and for a second, we didn't look away. It wasn't sexual. Not yet. It was something deeper than that. A recognition. A soft, painful awareness that both of us had become observers in the very lives we once built with our own hands. I used to think, Leah said, that if you loved someone long enough, you became inevitable. I exhaled slowly. Turns out, love isn't insurance. She smiled faintly. No, just a gamble. We talked that night. About nothing, mostly. Movies. Books. The way time seems to move differently when you're waiting for something to end. At one point, our hands touched as we both reached for the tea kettle. It wasn't electric. No thunderclap. No rush of forbidden thrill. But it was warm. Familiar. Undeniably human. She didn't pull away. Neither did I. But we didn't let it linger, either. We just let the moment pass, like two people acknowledging gravity and choosing not to fall. When she stood to leave, I walked her to the door. She paused with her hand on the frame, looking out at the street lamp flickering near her driveway. I don't want to hate him, she said. You don't have to. I think I might anyway. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the door a little wider and let her step out into the night. She turned before descending the steps. Thank you, she said. For what? For not needing anything from me. I gave a small smile. Maybe that's why this works. She nodded once, then walked down the steps, across the driveway, and into her own house. She didn't look back. I didn't expect her to. That night, I slept. Not lightly. Not restless. Not with one ear waiting for a key in the front door. For the first time in months, I let the silence of the house hold me without resistance. No questions. No rehearsed responses. Just breath. Stillness. I woke before the alarm, confused for a moment by how rested I felt. Rachel wasn't beside me. She'd never come home. Or maybe she had, and slept in the guest room. The bed hadn't been made that morning. Pillows out of place. Sheet wrinkled, still warm when I passed it on the way to the bathroom. But I didn't check the messages. Didn't scroll through her notifications. Didn't ask why. There was a peace in not caring about the performance anymore. Later that day, Leah texted, "We're not broken. Just reshaped." I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the message, letting the weight of it settle in. Because she was right. We weren't broken. Not completely. What we were was softened. By betrayal. By disappointment. By the slow unraveling of routines that used to feel like love. But in the space where our spouses had made room for absence, we had made space for something else. Not revenge. Not distraction. Just stillness. A kind of borrowed comfort, passed between us like shared breath. No expectations. No plans. Just two people surviving something quietly catastrophic, and deciding that survival didn't have to be lonely. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't planned. It just happened. One evening, Leah brought over a board game. One of those old ones with missing dice and cards that had gone soft at the edges. She said she found it in the back of a closet, buried beneath a box of photo frames and in used love letters. We sat on the floor of my living room, drinking red wine from mismatched mugs, laughing over how poorly we remembered the rules. Somewhere around the second glass, we stopped pretending we were just passing time. She leaned her head against my shoulder. I let her. No guilt. No justification. Rachel hadn't come home yet. Again. By now, her absences were routine, cloaked in excuses so worn they didn't even try to fit anymore. "Helping Leah," she'd still say, even as Leah sat next to me, silently rolling her eyes at the audacity. "They really think they've pulled this off," she murmured once. I nodded, and that's when it shifted. Not the game, not even us, but the dynamic. We stopped explaining ourselves. We stopped hiding. We weren't kissing in corners or meeting in secret. We didn't sneak glances or lie about where we were. We just existed. Together. The next morning, I left the curtains open. Leah's car was still in the driveway. She left a little after 7 a.m., wearing the same hoodie from the night before, her hair tied up carelessly. Nate was already gone, probably with Rachel. I didn't look away as she crossed the lawn barefoot, toes wet with dew, mug still in her hand. She turned before entering her front door and gave me a nod. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet acknowledgement of the new balance. It didn't take long for them to notice. Rachel came home earlier than usual 2 nights later. I was out on the porch, reading. She saw the second mug on the table, the blanket on the back of the chair beside me. She stood in the doorway a moment too long. "You have company?" she asked. I didn't look up. I did. "Leah?" I turned the page. "Yeah." She stepped forward, slow and cautious. "You two have been spending a lot of time together. So have you and Nate." There it was. No raised voice. No accusation. Just the thing neither of us had said, dropped into the space like a stone in still water. She blinked. "It's not what you think." "Okay," I said. "What is it?" She didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, she folded her arms and looked past me. "She's just going through a lot," she muttered. I finally looked at her. "So are we." Her eyes flickered. "Are you sleeping with her?" "No," I said. "But I'm not waiting up for you anymore." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. We stood there, her in the threshold, me on the porch, separated by years of choices that neither of us had owned until now. "You're calm," she said finally. "I am." "Why?" "Because I'm done begging for your attention. Because I stopped expecting the woman I married to come home. Because I've been holding my breath for months and finally remembered how to exhale." But I didn't say any of that. I just said, "Because I have nothing left to lose." That night, Leah and I didn't sit inside. We sat in my backyard, in the dark, with nothing but a single citronella candle between us. We talked about things we hadn't shared yet. She told me about their first date, how Nate was charming, funny, magnetic, how she ignored the red flags even then, how she'd convinced herself that love meant loyalty, even when it hurt. I told her about our anniversary trip to Maine, how Rachel cried during the sunset and wouldn't say why, how I now suspected it had been guilt, not joy. "You ever wonder," Leah asked, "if we were just placeholders?" For what? For the versions of themselves they were still chasing. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She leaned against me, her head resting just beneath my chin. I wrapped my arm around her, and we sat like that until the candle burned out. No sex. Not yet. But something closer than distance. Something steadier than lies. Rachel started asking more questions after that. where I was going, who I was with, what time I'd be home. I never lied. I just stopped explaining. I stopped pretending we were okay. Stopped smoothing the wrinkles in her excuses. Stopped pretending not to notice how often her hair was wet when she returned. How often she carried a change of clothes in her gym bag when she hadn't been to the gym in weeks. Once, she followed my eyes to the bag on the counter. She didn't move it. Didn't offer an excuse. Just watch me watching her. That was the new equilibrium. No lies. Just quiet choices. I'd spend evenings with Leah on my porch. Rachel would pass by the window and see us. Sometimes she'd stare for a second too long. Sometimes she'd slam a cabinet a little too hard. Once, I found her crying in the bathroom. I knocked. She didn't answer. I didn't open the door. Not to be cruel, but because I knew she didn't want me to. Why are you so calm? She asked again, days later, after coming home to find me laughing at something Leah had texted. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw what she wasn't saying. What she couldn't. You stopped choosing me, I said. She didn't deny it. And for once, that honesty felt like a kindness. We didn't plan the dinner. It wasn't some grand confrontation or theatrical unveiling. It was just an ordinary invitation. Rachel said she thought it would be nice to have Nate and Leah over. Like old times. Before things got weird, she said. I don't think she realized how hollow that sounded, or how much she was giving away by pretending we'd all been close to begin with. I told her sure, why not? It was the first time I'd said yes to her in weeks. She looked at me longer than necessary, as if searching for my motive. But I didn't flinch. I just nodded and went back to slicing vegetables. Leah texted me 2 hours later. She really invited us? She did. Should I come? You don't have to. There was a pause. Then, I want to. They arrived a few minutes late. Rachel was still fussing with the wine glasses, her anxiety wrapped tight around her shoulders like a silk shawl. She kept touching her hair, adjusting things that didn't need adjusting. When the doorbell rang, she didn't move. I'll get it, I said. Leah stood on the porch beside Nate, dressed in a black sweater and jeans that hugged her a little too perfectly for the occasion. Her hair was down, rare for her, and the scent of something soft and floral caught the air between us as I opened the door. She met my eyes, said nothing, and stepped inside. Nate followed behind her, all cologne and casual smugness. His handshake was firm, too firm, the kind of grip that says, I win, even when no one's playing. Rachel greeted them both with an awkward hug. She smiled too wide, laughed too high. I watched her watching Leah, watched the way her eyes flicked over her outfit, the tiny hesitation before she offered a compliment. You look nice, Rachel said. So do you, Leah replied, polite but empty. We sat down at the table, Rachel and I on one side, Nate and Leah across from us. Polite smiles. Polished forks. Loaded silence. Rachel poured the wine too fast, spilling a few drops on the tablecloth. She cursed under her breath, dabbed it with a napkin, then looked at me like she expected a comment. I offered none. Nate cleared his throat. So, how's work been? Busy, I said. But good. Same, he replied. Clients keep me running. Leah sipped her wine. Rachel kept her eyes on her plate. The conversation moved like cold syrup, slow, reluctant, and sticky. But no one mentioned the elephant in the room. No one said anything about the texts, the perfume, the absences, the way Leah and I had begun to orbit each other with gravitational certainty. It was all surface tension, until Leah shifted slightly under the table, and I felt it. Her fingers found mine. She didn't grip. She didn't clutch. She just touched, and left them there. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I let my fingers settle over hers, lightly, purposefully. Rachel's voice caught in her throat mid-sentence. She was telling some story about a vacation we never took, a plan we'd spoken of once, but never followed through on. A fantasy, a lie in trip form. Her words slowed. I turned to her and smiled gently, encouragingly, like I didn't know she knew. She blinked, then looked away. Nate didn't notice. Or maybe he did, but didn't care. He was too busy talking about his new fitness app. His voice was loud, confident, desperate. Leah didn't say much, but she didn't let go. When dessert came out, store-bought tiramisu, Rachel made some joke about not being as domestic as she used to be. I think we've all changed, Leah said softly, her voice barely above the clink of silverware. Everyone froze, just for a second. Then the moment passed. We finished the meal in a kind of uneasy truce, like 4 diplomats negotiating the end of a war no one had the nerve to declare. When they left, Nate offered a handshake again. Leah didn't kiss Rachel's cheek, just said, "Thanks for dinner," and held my gaze a half-second too long. After they were gone, Rachel didn't speak. She stood in the kitchen, loading dishes too quietly, her movements robotic. "You okay?" I asked, feigning concern. She didn't turn around. "What was that?" "Dinner." "No," she said, sharper. Her hand, under the table. I paused. "Then, what about it?" She faced me now, eyes red. "Did you do that on purpose?" "No," I said. But I didn't stop her either. Rachel swallowed hard. "You don't even care anymore," she whispered. "I did," I said. "For a long time." She said nothing after that. Just went upstairs. Alone. I stayed in the kitchen and finished the wine. Slowly. Without guilt. Without triumph. There was no victory here. Just the truth, visible now, like a bruise beneath the surface. Rachel left the house 3 days later. No slammed doors. No suitcase dragging across the floor. No, we need to talk, preamble. Just a quiet Saturday morning, the kind that usually smelled like coffee and the possibility of peace. But instead, it smelled like endings. I was in the kitchen making toast when she came down the stairs, dressed in jeans and a black coat I didn't recognize. A new purchase, maybe. One I hadn't seen in our closet, which now felt more like her storage unit than a shared space. She didn't speak. Just moved around the house slowly, methodically, picking things up, placing them into a small overnight bag. She avoided eye contact. I didn't press. Her phone buzzed once on the counter. She didn't check it. It buzzed again. Still, she didn't look. I caught the name on the lock screen. Nate. Her fingers trembled slightly as she zipped the bag. When she turned to leave, she finally looked at me. I didn't flinch. "Are you going to her?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'm staying here." Rachel's eyes flickered. A little surprise, maybe. A little shame. She nodded once. Then she left. The door clicked shut behind her like punctuation on a sentence we'd been too tired to finish. Across the street, Nate wasn't faring much better. Leah told me later how it happened. How she came home to find Nate pacing in the kitchen, muttering something about people not knowing boundaries. "You knew the boundaries," she told him. He tried to argue. Blame shift. Claim emotional distance, not physical betrayal. She laughed in his face. "Do you think I'm stupid?" she asked him. He didn't answer. Just like Rachel hadn't answered me. They all run the same playbook in the end. Deny, deflect, dissolve. But it didn't work this time. Because neither of us were asking for an apology. We were asking for the dignity they'd already spent. That night, Leah came over. She didn't knock. She didn't text first. She just walked in, like she belonged. Like this was home. She didn't bring anything except herself. No bags. No toothbrush. No dramatic declaration. She just walked into the kitchen, found me sitting at the table, and said, "It's done." I nodded. Me too. We didn't celebrate. There was no gloating. Only relief, quiet and slow. We sat on the couch and watched something forgettable on TV, our bodies leaning against each other more naturally than I'd ever imagined. Halfway through the episode, she turned to me and whispered, "It wasn't revenge." "I know," I said. "It was comparison." I looked at her. "They weren't enough," she continued. "Not because we were better, but because we saw them clearly, and they still chose someone else." That landed deeper than anything else had. They hadn't chosen adventure, or passion, or even lust. They'd chosen mediocrity with a side of secrecy, and in doing so, they'd forced us to look inward, to see what remained after the curtain fell. For me, it was stillness. For Leah, it was clarity. For both of us, it was each other. Nate moved out 2 days later. Leah said he didn't take much, just gym clothes, a few watches, and the bottle of cologne he always overused. He didn't cry, didn't beg, just walked out like a man already halfway into someone else's life. Rachel, on the other hand, called once. I let it ring. She didn't leave a voicemail, didn't text either. I think she knew. The silence wasn't passive anymore. It was deliberate. That's what they never expected. Not the anger, not the confrontation, but the calm. The way we chose peace over pettiness. The way we let go without screaming. They expected tantrums. They got resolve. Leah and I didn't rush into anything. There were still spaces between us that needed air. Still questions neither of us were ready to ask, and truths we weren't eager to hear. But we moved slowly. Intentionally. We made coffee together in the mornings, learning each other's quiets. We didn't share a bed at first. Just time. Presence. Respect. We let the house settle. We let the grief breathe. And in that space, something steady formed. Not a rebound. Not a replacement. Just something honest. And honesty, after all the lies, felt radical. One night, as we sat on the porch, Leah turned to me and said, "Do you miss her?" I thought about it. "No," I said, "but I miss who she was. Or maybe who I was with her." Leah nodded. "Yeah. You?" She stared at the street for a long time. I miss not knowing. Before everything felt suspicious. Silence. Then, "But I don't miss him." I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. The boxes were lighter than I expected. Maybe because I'd already let go of so much. It was a quiet morning. Overcast. Early spring. The kind of day where even the birds seem unsure whether to speak. I loaded the last of the labeled boxes into the back of the truck, then stood for a long moment on the curb, looking at the house that had once been a life. Rachel wasn't there. She'd stopped coming by weeks ago, stopped trying to salvage what had never really been rooted deep enough to survive the storm. She sent one last text a few days ago. "I hope you're happy." I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because I finally was. My new place was just across town, smaller, simpler, clean lines, good light, a porch that caught the golden hour just right. The landlord said it had good bones. I said I wasn't looking for promises, just peace. Leah helped me unpack. Not all at once. Not like a partner staking a claim. More like a friend who understood what it meant to rebuild without rushing. She brought over a plant. Low maintenance, she said. Just enough to prove something's alive in here. I didn't ask what she meant. I just placed it near the window and said thanks. She'd started referring to her house across the street as the old place. Not because she was moving, but because she'd begun painting the inside walls again. "It's not a reset," she told me. "It's a reclaim." She invited me over one night for wine and a movie. No pretense, just comfort. I brought the sugar. The same half-used canister she'd borrowed months ago. She laughed when she saw it. "I forgot I ever asked for this." "You never really needed it," I said. "Guess not." We didn't talk about Rachel or Nate anymore. Not directly. Occasionally, a memory would rise, uninvited but not unwelcomed. Like a song in a restaurant you hadn't heard since high school, jarring at first, but soft in its fading. Weeks passed. Then, one morning, she knocked on my door again. I smiled when I opened it. "We doing the sugar thing again?" She held it up with both hands. Same canister, now almost full. "I figured it was time," she said. "One last return." I stepped aside to let her in. She didn't move. Instead, she held the container out toward me like a peace offering, or maybe something else. "I think," she said slowly, "I'll just buy my own from now on." It wasn't cold. It wasn't a rejection. It was a declaration. A moment of grace, of independence, of clarity. I took the canister from her hands and smiled. Probably a good idea. She smiled back, and in that moment, I saw the woman she'd become through all of this. Wiser, softer in the right places, sharper where she needed to be. Neither of us needed each other. That was the beauty of it. What we shared now wasn't about filling gaps or patching holes. It was about standing beside someone and not needing to lean. Later that afternoon, I sat on my new porch with a coffee and nothing in particular to think about. No second phone. No empty wine glass left on the counter. No lies to rehearse. Just quiet. A genuine kind of silence. Not avoidance, not suspicion. Just the absence of ache. Across the street, Leah stepped onto her porch. She was barefoot, holding a paintbrush, her hair in a messy bun and a smudge of yellow on her cheek. She looked over, caught my eye, and waved. Not a desperate wave. Not one seeking rescue or signaling need. Just a wave. Simple. Honest. Human. And I waved back. I never thought it would end like this. Not with shouting. Not with slammed doors or wrecked furniture. But with returned sugar and calm mornings. With two people who had once been lied to, now living in their truth, quietly, completely. Some betrayals burn everything down. Others just open the windows, let in the air, and show you the rot you didn't want to see. Rachel and Nate had tried to build something out of secrecy. Leah and I, we built something out of silence. And that made all the difference.